Hey, good afternoon, Automotive Aftermarket. Carm Capriato, week 196, the Town Hall Academy. Wow. I don't know about you, Hunt, but that's a lot of weeks in a row.
That is.
It is a lot of weeks in a row. I love doing this. I love bringing the single subject aftermarket forum to the industry. Of course, we broadcast this live on a bunch of sites, Facebook, Aftermarket Weekly, my YouTube channel, Remarkable Results. It's out there. It's live on my website. And of course, we repurpose this every Thursday. It drops every Thursday morning on your favorite podcast listening app. We're going to talk today about the CARES Act and a paycheck paycheck protection program, PPP. I could say that naturally. I don't know why I just had a mental block there. With me is Hunt Demarest, CPA from Parr Mellis and Associates. You can find them on the web at Parr Mellis. Now that's PAARMELIS.com. Specialists in the automotive repair space. It's amazing, Hunt, that you guys just do business with shops.
Makes our life a lot easier, and I think it gets a lot better product for our clients too.
Well, great. Hey, look at this show wouldn't be possible if it wasn't for Shopware and Shop Marketing Pros. Now, more than ever, you're focused on bringing cars through your bays safely and efficiently. Shopware Shop Management System offers a completely contactless workflow. Your customers can review, approve, and even pay for the repairs right from their smartphone. Request a demo at getshopware.com. And I'm trying to do my own production here. I'm sorry, I flipped the wrong switch. Is your marketing company sharing the same vanilla social media posts for you that they do for every other shop? Shop Marketing Pros. I mean, they're a boutique company. Now, that's not how they do their business. They believe each shop is unique with its own story. Contact them today. Get your story told on the web at shopmarketingpros.com. Hunt. Wow, it's turning out to be a couple of mistakes here today, which I rarely make.
Friday.
It's Friday. It's Friday, and actually, I wasn't here in the studio all morning. I actually had to go out and do an errand and come back, and I think I'm all goofed up. But hey, look at the uniqueness about your business is one of the things that I love because you just do business with people in the industry. Now, I have a great friend, and I never knew this until about 4 weeks ago, and you're his accountant, to be nameless. But he loves what you guys do for him because he showed me his report card and he shows me how he aligns with the rest of the group that you do business with. And I know it's hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of clients. What a great barometer that you provide your clients, I have to say.
Thank you. Thank you.
All right, we're here to talk about the Paycheck Protection Program and the CARES Act. A lot of things going on. Who knows if we'll ever have another one of these, and that's in the hands of the people who run Washington. But so many, I'm sure, of your clients decided to get on board with it. And now it's time to say, hey, what do we do now? How do we actually get this forgiveness? Which I think, and I when I published this episode, somebody wrote to me and says, hey, Carm, I got total forgiveness on my loan. And if people haven't done this, I'd love to hear your perspective on what needs to be done.
Cool. So let's just kind of start an overview of where we are. And so the biggest thing that we need to check with our banks first is if they're even accepting this. A lot of banks out there aren't accepting it. I know for one, PNC and some of these larger ones are still not accepting these. And so that's the first thing. Talk to your banker and say, hey, are you accepting this? Do you see it on the horizon? What do I need to start doing right now? Because some of these are accepting it. So if they are accepting it, depending on what income level you're at, then you can go ahead and apply for this. But one of the things that I want people to keep in mind is this is not an urgent thing. And so there was a lot of confusion out there because on the actual paperwork itself, it says that the paperwork expires October 31st of this year, which is tomorrow. The SBA officially announced and they came out and they said, hey, actually just ignore that date on there. It's still on the paperwork if you download it today. So I'm not sure why they just don't remove it. But we actually have 10 months after the end of the 24-week forgiveness or the end of the 24-week PPP period to do this. And so if you got your PPP back in May, rough numbers, you're not going to have to officially do this until June of next year. Now, that being said, I've had a handful of clients already submit this to their banks. Banks are starting to process this, and almost every single client that I have that has submitted to the bank, within hours, the bank has come back and said, "You are forgiven. We're good to go." But there's really two pieces to this. The bank has to accept it, and then the SBA has to accept it. We are still waiting on the SBA forgiveness for all of those people. I don't know anyone firsthand that's got it officially approved by the SBA. Now, the SBA has claimed that they are processing it. Carm, did you have someone that actually got approved from the
Yeah,
SBA?
and so that's my question. He said to me, "Hey, Carm, I got forgived, but maybe he got
By
half.
talking to bank,
He
yeah.
got half forgived."
But I think that really, just like when we did the original PPP application, the person we're really trying to appease is the bank. And so, like with the original PPP application, if the bank gave it the blessing, it was just a matter of formality. And the SBA, once they started processing these, was just processing them, by the hour. And so, I think what we're going to see is a buildup here of banks accepting these. And when they finally start transmitting them to the SBA, that the SBA is just going to turn around and just start stamping these and saying, "Hey, you PNC, you approved CARM. You said that the forgiveness application looks good. That looks good on our end."
So you're telling me the SBA may be just doing some rubber stamping here?
I don't see physically how they could get through this much without doing that. I mean,
So
just the magnitude that we're seeing here is just unprecedented, and I just don't see how they could actually look at all of these.
so even though you're not the expert and you're not the final authority,
Mhm.
your suggestion is if the bank says you're forgived, SBA may not be far behind.
What if I was a betting man? What I think is going to happen here is just like happened with the original PPP application. If the banks are okay with it, the SBA is in that case going to give you your PPP money, and in this case, going to give you forgiveness. Now they are going to circle back as they've done on the original PPP application and randomly audit stuff. They're going to pull stuff out that jumps out. And if you put in something fraudulent, there's a good chance that someone's going to catch that, but they just don't have the manpower to review line by line every single one of these. There's just no way.
Okay, I have not applied for this. I don't qualify in any way for it. So I'm going to ask some questions that may be, hey, Carm, these are crazy questions, but I'm going to go ahead anyway, okay? So I applied and I got approved. In the forgiveness program, Hunt, do I have to show where that money went?
Yeah, and so one of the luxuries that we have now that they extended this to 24 weeks is almost every shop out there has used this 2 to 3 times over in just payroll alone. And so when we do this application, we're only going to use payroll, which means that the reporting requirements are going to be very straightforward. Essentially, all we're going to need is a payroll summary or payroll report for that 24-week period.
That's it. That's simple. So even if they allowed me to do some expenses, in fact, I think there was a change in the law that there was a percent for payroll, percent for other.
Exactly. And we're going to use 100% for payroll. And a lot of banks are actually requiring you to only use payroll if you can, because they don't want to review your utility statement. They don't want to review your mortgage interest. They don't want to review your health insurance. So they're saying, Carm, we gave you 100 grand. If you spend over 100 grand on payroll, you're only allowed to use payroll for forgiveness.
Send your report. We're going to look it over.
Yeah.
It's not going to be that complicated. So you have a great point. Who has the time to look at all of those in-depth or detailed expense reports, Hunt, and how many loans were approved?
Millions and millions and millions.
Yeah, you see, yeah.
And some of the smaller ones could take them a couple minutes, but there was people out there that got millions of dollars of PPP that have 300 employees. I mean, that's weeks for someone to review all of that. It's probably going to be weeks for someone to prepare that. And, just a handful of those are going to really just kind of stop this whole thing up.
So is it this simple? I mean, if you got your money, you got to get with your bank, but you have 10 months from when you were approved.
Correct.
Which and don't be afraid if you look at the application and you're worried and sweating. October 31st is not the deadline.
No. And so as far as how much time this should take you, there's really two different forms out there that most shops are going to be using. There's a short form called the 3508S, which is for people that got less than $50,000. That should take you about 5 minutes. It's extremely straightforward. You pretty much put one number on there, which is how much do you want forgiven, which is obviously the full amount of PPP, and you initial and sign it, and you give them your payroll report, and you're done. Most other shops, if you're above 50,000, are going to be able to use the EZ form, and that one should take you about 10 to 15 minutes. Again, we're only going to be using payroll, so we're going to have to put a couple other numbers in there and calculations. But, I went through this on my webinar and showed people, and I think I had a lot of people reach out and say, I was really nervous about doing this, and I saw you did it, and I've said, what am I missing? Like, I was completely overthinking it. It's really just not that complicated.
Okay, so this week, I know you did your own webinar, under Par Mellis. Can anyone who's saying, oh my God, I'm terrible with paperwork, I hate forms, where can they see that?
So if you go on and follow us on Facebook, so we posted this on our Facebook page. And so if you search Par Mellis and Associates, we also, if you're not on Facebook, we also posted it on our YouTube channel as well.
Okay. Par Mellis, that's PAARMELLIS and Associates. Okay. What else do I need to know as a small business person?
And so I think we kind of have a good question on here about the tax implications that we can talk about,
Sure.
because that kind of is something that I've seen come up a lot about the timing of all of this.
Good. Let's do it.
All right. And so a lot of people have asked about this of, as it stands right now, this money is going to be taxable in one way, shape, or form. Now, just like everything else that's happened this year, politics, the world in general, this stuff is changing by the minute, right? But as of right now, we're going to have to essentially pay tax on whatever PPP money that we got. And so one of the questions that I've been having a lot is, if I don't want to pay tax on it this year, should I wait to do my application after the year, because it's not technically income until it's forgiven? And so I see a lot of people, it's the same question here. And so, so technically, if that money is not forgiven by the SBA, that is still a loan and not income on the books. And so what I am kind of talking to my clients and what I'm looking down through their numbers is, do I want to recognize this as income this year, or do I want to recognize this income for next year? If I have a pretty standard year, that I'm having a pretty standard year other than this PPP, personally, I'm probably going to recognize this income this year, whether or not I actually even need to. The reason I say that is really twofold. First reason is I have the cash now. I want to be done with this and move on with my life. The next reason is I know what the tax rates are today, and I know what they're going to be taxed on this year. We all can agree, no matter what happens with this election, whenever we figure out what actually happens with it, the tax rates are only going to go one direction, and that's up, no matter who wins this. They're not going to get any lower. And so what I'd hate to see is someone extend this, not recognize this income this year, move it all into next year, and then, hey, what if the tax rates go up 10%? We just got a 10% penalty for holding on to this money. And so, we have some flexibility on that, and it's something that should be considered. But yeah, I mean, if it's me and I have it and I'm ready to pay tax on it, and I've talked to my accountant and we have a plan for it, then there's no reason not to wait. If you do wait until next year to do the forgiveness application, I still think that there's an opportunity for us to recognize it this year if we really want to. The IRS almost never gets mad if you recognize income early. They usually get mad on the opposite. So we still have some flexibility there. And we'll really have to see, because I think that they're probably going to come out with some rules, and they might even force our hand to recognize it in 1 year versus the next. We just don't know.
You're not getting away from talking to your accountant then.
No, you have to. And you have to have a plan, especially, for people that have different stuff going on this year. Like, let's use for an example, if I'm having a really good year, or possibly have a lot of shops that are actually selling their business, getting out, I maybe don't want to add even more income to my numbers this year. So maybe I'll push it to next year. But for those of you out there that maybe struggled this year and were a little bit down on income compared to what you've done in the past, hey, that might be a good year to recognize that income so that we can keep it in a lower tax bracket.
Okay. Hey, look, at anybody who's hanging with us, we appreciate you being there on all the different social media channels that we're broadcasting on. Give us a like, a comment, check in with your city, but please, Hunt's here to answer your questions. And we sure appreciate him being here. And we have had some really good stuff going on. I think we're attempting to address them the best we can. So let me ask this really off the wall question. So I got this money. and I used it to pay my expenses. Isn't this an expense reduction, not an income?
And so this was the kind of classic bait and switch here, right? And so when they came out, a lot of people's concern was, hey, is this going to be taxable income? I want to know about that and plan accordingly. And from the get-go, the SBA came out and said, no, this is not going to be a taxable income. This is truly money. You guys are going to get it. There's going to be no tax consequences on this.
Yeah.
And then who got involved was our friends at the IRS. And so the IRS came out and kind of pulled up tax law from about 50 years ago that addresses a similar situation. And they say, well, that's fine that they're not going to tax you on the PPP. But in the tax law, it says if you get money from a non-taxable grant, then any expenses that you pay with that money are not deductible. And so it was a bit of a shell game. They're saying, well, the PPP money itself is not taxable, but all the expenses that go along with it aren't deductible. In essence, the money's taxable as it stands right now.
I'm sorry. Hi, I'm from the government. I'm here to help.
Exactly.
I'm sorry. I just can't help but saying that. Here's a comment question from Bill. I heard back from my banker this morning. He said my PPP was forgiven, but the $4,000 EIDL grant needs to be paid back. I didn't. I thought that was different. But anyway, he said that they won't forgive both. Sounds right?
I think sounds right is the bad phrase because, Bill, I'm probably in the same camp as you. It doesn't sound right to me, right? Because we have a grant that we have to pay back, but it is true. And so what ends up happening is another shell game here, right? And so they came out with this EIDL advance money, the grant money. And so they said, hey, well, the grant money is still forgiven, Carm. You're not going to have to pay back the $4,000, but we're actually going to reduce your PPP forgiveness by $4,000. Again, it's, hey, if I got 50,000, I now have 46,000 forgiven. And so one way or another, whatever we got in that grant money, we're going to have to either pay back immediately or pay back over a couple of years.
You're telling me that the goalposts keep moving?
Can you believe that? Can you believe the government would steer us wrong like that?
Hi, I'm from the government. I'm here to help. Oh my God. Hey, thanks for hanging out with us, Kent Bullard, from great friend. His dad, Cecil. Everyone knows Cecil. Every business owner should be watching this right now. Well, we'll have this thing repurposed on video and, of course, our audio podcast. Thank you so much for all the questions that are coming in. I appreciate that. I want to give another great shout out to our great sponsors here. When someone searches for a shop, who are they finding when they type stuff in? Your competitors? Well, it should be you. The good people over at Shop Marketing Pros know how to drive website traffic and make Google work for you. ShopMarketingPros.com. And finally, to a great shout out to Shopware. Stop spending time chasing your customer. Shopware's leading shop management systems, helping shops just like yours generate more profit per ticket with less time on the phone. Break away from your legacy system and implement a completely contactless workflow today. Get started at getshopware.com. Wow. It seems to me with these moving goalposts, Hunt, with all the things that you know and understand about how to manage this from a tax base, this is not a DIY project for anybody.
No, and it's really something that it doesn't need to be overcomplicated. The actual forgiveness application, even the actual original application is fairly straightforward, but some of the impacts beyond that are something that need to be taken into consideration. The tax planning on it, the recognizing of it, and whatever it might be. And so, yeah, you need to be making sure that you're aware of this. And what we're doing for our clients right now, because again, we think that this is obviously going to change before we file taxes next year. And so what we're doing is we're sitting our clients down and saying, hey, we know we're going to have to pay tax on it. Essentially, it's going to be this year and next year. Hey, if we have to pay it this year, this is the kind of balance due that we're looking at, or possibly a lesser refund depending on how the year went. If we don't have to pay it this year, it's going to be this amount. And so kind of preparing people for both ways, because we just don't know what's going to happen. We want to make sure that we're staying ahead of it. And like I said, some people have unique situations where we do have a planning opportunity on when we are hopefully going to be able to move around and recognize that income.
Do you have clients paying estimateds?
Yeah, and so we have clients paying estimates, but the good thing about this money is if everything else was equal and you were paying your regular estimates, if you are going to owe more money because of this PPP, 99% of the time you don't have to put in any more estimates. You just need to be aware of it before April 15th.
Golly, question from Facebook. So is there interest due on that EIDL grant when paying it back?
No, and so, like I was saying before, you're not actually paying back the EIDL grant, right? We're paying back a portion of the PPP, but the PPP is accruing interest, but it doesn't actually start charging any interest until it gets rolled into a loan. So no interest associated with the grant portion of that EIDL.
Wow. We, as great as this money was to help so many of us in businesses that were required to be here,
Mhm.
when you think about it, for all the restaurants that closed that really needed the PPP and we didn't, although, business wasn't normal for those first couple of months and the industry recovered so nicely. This was a gift, a huge gift. Don't you agree?
Oh yeah, I mean the thing is that I've been looking, and the handful of clients that I've discussed their financials this year, we always kind of look and say, all right, it's been a weird year. Let's compare it to where we were last year, and almost all of them we're pretty much dead on. It's a completely different way that we got to this time of the year, but most people are dead on where they were last year. A lot of them are up, and then we factor the PPP on top of that, and we're way, way, way ahead with that stuff. And so, I think, rightfully so, some people feel guilty about it, right? Because you see so many people in this day and age struggling. But you know what? We'll take the wins where we can, right? And do everything that we can to take care of ourselves, our family, our team. So.
Is there anything else that we need to share that's on your list? You're the expert, I'm not, and I don't want to end this show prematurely without making sure that we cover some things that I don't have the question to.
Yeah, I mean, the biggest thing that I'm going to be saying right now is just be in contact with our bank. Just make sure we have an open dialogue there. Make sure that we know what their expectations of them is for us. And unfortunately, we just have to kind of keep our eye on the way things go. We're going to try and stay ahead of this as much as we can and plan for this, but this stuff changes all the time. So just because I have a plan right now on when I'm going to do this, what I'm going to recognize as income, we know that stuff's going to change. And so just make sure that, we're keeping ahead of this and trying to plan as much as we can. But, a lot of times it's just really a guess and a hope.
Well, look, I know we can't give everyone the perfect answer that they want. I think the answers are work with your accountant, work with your tax advisor if that's someone different, and of course your banker.
Mm-hmm.
Your banker seems to be, I think, the key to this whole thing. The banker actually has to take that application, but the accountant has to, basically say, hey, did we file this year or next? By the way, Steve Conley, thank you so much for this. The PPP was a godsend for the collision business. Think about no cars being driven for those so many months, and how many less collisions that there were. I mean, even though they were required, they were allowed to be open, they probably didn't have anywhere near the revenue or opportunity that they had because of that. Keith Katz, follow up, my bank forgave my PPP, but I got charged $314 interest on the $6,000 EIDL grant. Should I challenge this?
And so I was wondering if we're going to have someone, because I've seen a couple people have this on their account. I would personally challenge this, Keith, because like I said, everything that I've talked to and the banks that I've talked to, they have said that they are not charging interest on this. My argument back to my bank would be, hey, if you guys would have told me, 2 months ago, 3 months ago, that you're charging me interest on this $6,000, then I would have been able to pay you guys back this money and you guys would have had it. We're essentially getting a bill after the fact of, hey, Carm, I let you hold on to that. Oh, by the way, you owe me interest for that luxury. And so I would probably really try and challenge that, because I just don't think that that's right. I don't think that that was the intent of the way that this was written.
Keith, I think it was Keith who said I got forgave. And so the next question was, Keith, the EIDL. And oh, by the way, Keith, if you have a chance to put this in Facebook, did you get SBA forgiveness? I'm curious about that because Keith was one of the guys that I had heard from. Kevin says you need to put a logo on the back wall there.
I probably need to. I got a little logo here on the thing.
Yeah, I got that. And Andrew said he just spoke with you for an hour on the phone yesterday. So you
Small
are,
world.
Andrew, you could probably give this seminar now that you've done all this. Thank you so much for being there. Rob, oh God, Rob Russell, good to see you. Great update. Appreciate all you do. Hey, now that is one hell of a great guy, Rob. And I've interviewed him, and he's got a great story and a great brand. And by the way, a hell of a multi-shop operator. Keith hasn't responded yet, so we were really not sure what's going on with that. But any other questions? We're gonna let Hunt go because we can probably talk about all the scenarios that you add the government to a situation in a scenario, and everybody wants. There is no one great single answer, and I guess, as you had said earlier, Hunt, this is a moving target.
Yeah, and that's what, the big thing is that, also what a lot of people don't realize is a lot of this stuff is happening after the election. And so there's not as much urgency after the election because most of these politicians have re-election in mind. And so I think we'll see things slow down even more afterwards. Fortunately for this industry, I don't think that there's anyone really out there looking for another round of PPP, even if they're going to offer it. But, unfortunately for a lot of other industries out there, there's still people that need help, and, the business is not where it needs to be.
What I think you're saying, what I know you've been saying, and what I heard is pay attention, don't ignore it. You're going to have to, you're going to have to complete the form. You're going to have to get forgiveness in certain ways or pay some interest back on the EIDL. And there's no free lunch.
Exactly.
I'm sorry. There's a free buffet, but there's no free lunch.
Exactly. It's a free buffet, but as you walk out, they hand you a little bill, pretty much.
Here, $1 for the homeless.
That's what Keith found out. Keith was saying, "Hey, you know what? I'm all forgiven." And as he's walking out the bank hands him that bill for his $314 in interest that no one told him about.
Great. Hey, thank you, Hunt Demarest, CPA from Parmelis. That's PAAR Mellis and Associates, parmelis.com. Specialists in our business, the automotive repair shops. Thanks for being here, man.
Thanks for having me, Carm.